say that we can get going. We've got three of us, which should put us into the, what do we call it, into where we need to be for this. Let's see, we got Donna, we got Doug, we got me, we got Jonathan. And so we'll start with, all right, we're getting ready to go here, 7:02 p.m. Review and approval of the previous meeting minutes. Everybody should have gotten those in their email. Does anybody have any comments, questions, alterations?
Nope.
You're good, Doug. You good, Donna? You there? Oh, she's muted.
She nodded.
Good. Yep.
Okay. You guys can stay off mute. There's only us, unless the room gets crazy like happened last time. What do you call it? Hopefully that doesn't happen. So all right. So we're good with the previous meeting minutes. Kathy got those out, and what I'll do is I'll have her look at this video to do the minutes for this one here. So we're good at that on number one. So the what do you call it? Rear door project update, meeting with Ann Waite and associated stuff. And I'm gonna talk for a little bit, and then I'll leave it. I'll open it up for Jonathan to say a few words because he's been involved in this. Basically, there's been a lot of discussions and meetings and people getting together with the idea that there was opportunity towards the front of the building at the front door. Doug and I talked a little bit about this, what was said and going on. So there's the Albion Street project, which is doing a bunch of sidewalk and streetscape stuff. And we talked to the project manager and the engineer on that about, including the idea that maybe they could put in a ramp for us on Main Street when they reconfigure the sidewalks. And if they put the ramp for us on Main Street when they reconfigured the sidewalks, that would make it so that we could move our handicap door to the front, which is, more desirable, but not necessarily imperative. And so we were really chasing down that alley for a while, lots of meetings, conversations, and things to that effect. What ended up happening was the Albion Street project has been modified. And the modification is that they're going to start the project at Foster Street, which is right in front of the Wakefield item, and move on from there. And our section of Albion Street has now been put into the Downtown Envision project. So what that means is this spring when they do Albion Street, they're going to do everything from about 2 doors up from us down. And they're not going to do from Main Street up to Foster, which is where we lie. And we're going to be put into sort of a phase 2 of the downtown revitalization. So the phase 1, which is Albion Street, less R1 block, will go forward this spring. And then the phase 2, which is sometime after that, where there's already been a lot of money put into developing it. So it's definitely happening. It's just a matter of the timeline. Will include the front of our building. During this phase 2 approach, the idea of having space for a ramp in front and widening our sidewalks, which would be required if we were to put a ramp in front because the sidewalks then wouldn't be wide enough, has been pitched out there of, hey, can we have that space, guaranteed in this phase 2? Unfortunately, we can't have that space guaranteed, which I find disappointing, but nonetheless, it's a fact. And so we're sitting on our goal of ADA compliance, which we're really close to, and we'd love to go towards the front. However, the unknowns towards the front would be that we can't get a guarantee that we can put a ramp out front at this point with their future project, which still would be out there a couple of years. So that's unfortunate. The upside of that would have been if we could have gotten a guarantee that we could put a ramp out there, we could have moved our project to the front door and done our handicap accessibility door, which our obligation starts from when you go inside the building off of the street, and this project's obligation is the street. So we could have done the handicap accessible door towards our front, been ready to go, and then when the second phase of the Albion Street project comes in, we would be looking at putting a ramp to connect those two. Unfortunately, at this point, we can't get a guarantee that we'll have enough room for the ramp. So it seems in line with our goals, and I would advocate for it. And I'm looking to sort of get consensus on this. We did vote to go ahead on the rear door a month or two ago. And but then we sort of put the brakes on it as we explored things with the DPW business manager, Ann Waite, who's very helpful. And I see here's Tony. And so looks like he's got audio, so no video. So we talked to the DPW business manager, about this and the idea of, hey, let's build on the front door if we can get this guarantee that we can have our ramp at some point. We can't get that guarantee. So now the idea is that, we've got our drawings for the back door, basically ready to go. There's another phase of drawings that have to happen, but it's nothing insurmountable. Most of the details there, it's just having the architect thump down for about another, 10 hours of detail work to get it ready to go out to bid. So I spoke with Ann Waite, the DPW business manager, and we're back to talking about the rear entrance, which is something that we can actually do, that we've got money for. And we're talking about the details as far as the easement from Chestnut Street to our door. So there's there's some talk with Ann about, how do we, one of the things is snow removal. So if we do this off of the back door, the easement isn't town property. And Jonathan might have more to say about this because I wasn't in all of these conversations. But so at this point, we can't get a guarantee on the front door. So an idea that came up, which was, hey, let's develop the front door with Mike, sort of is kind of dead at this point, unless we want to wait, a couple of years, which I don't think we do. But again, I'll leave that to other people to decide. But now we're focusing back on the back door. And I spoke to Ann today about that. We talked about the architect stuff that needs to happen for that. And then I'm going to sort of throw this over to Jonathan because I wasn't part of these conversations, but I heard about them. We're going to talk about the easement between where our door would be with that sort of little ramp to get in our building, and then getting access from Chestnut Street across that parking lot / the bank's property, which is an 8-foot easement, which we're sort of straddling. Which could potentially, and I'm going to throw this to Jonathan, potentially could be part of this phase 2 of the Envision thing, where we would get hardscape coming up to our back door to make it look pretty and in line with everything. Jonathan, do you have some info on this?
Yeah, so maybe just first, just to share a little bit of context around the Albion Street project. So I think ultimately the question or the decision around, oops, sorry, I just lost my screen. Let me sketch you. Oh, there we go. There we go. Now I can see you again. The decision and the question around sort of the scope of the Albion Street specific project, really ultimately came down to sort of time and money. So from a time standpoint, as we were sketching out options that would allow us to do an accessible entrance in the front in the short term, as Chris mentioned, one of the things that we would have to do is actually scope where sort of the width of the street in front of the Cultural Exchange. And, while Bill Renault, the town engineer, came up with a couple of sketches for it, they raised all sorts of other questions around, well, if we're going to have a bump out here, does that make sense given that, we've got sort of an intersection on both sides that's only about 50 feet away? And so how do we accommodate that? How do we think about parking, particularly if we're setting up a handicap accessible entrance, but there's no accessible parking nearby because we've taken it up to allow for the entrance? Does that make sense? And so it just created a number of, I think, design questions and sort of technical questions that at the end of the day, I think the DPW felt it would have taken them long enough to try to figure out how to handle those that it would have potentially put the entire Albion Street project at risk. So the grant that we have to do the Albion Street project, that's money that we need to spend by June 30th. And because of all of the redesign that we would need to do, their concern was they just wouldn't have time to kind of pull that off. The second issue is money. The amount of the grant for Albion Street really wasn't going to cover the entire cost of doing the entire street from North Ave to Main Street. And so we as a town would have had to make up for the difference. by actually delaying that kind of piece of Albion between Main Street and Foster Street and putting that into the Envision project, what we'll be able to do is, instead of using town funds, we'll be able to use the state and federal money that's coming in for Envision to pay for that work. And so that actually gives us a lot more financial flexibility to do it too. So ultimately, I think the consensus was, given that, we didn't want to do sort of a sloppy job of kind of coming up with something that gets you an entrance, but maybe doesn't sort of answer some of the larger design questions. And given that we also wanted to take advantage of more federal and state money if we could, we thought it made sense to, basically use the grant that we have in the near term to do that stretch of Albion from Foster to North Ave, and then look at the stretch from Foster to Main Street as part of the larger Envision project. And by doing so, that buys us a lot more time and potentially a lot more money to be able to do something kind of really unique and different. So rather than thinking about, for example, just a bump out that's big enough to allow a handicap ramp into the cultural exchange, could we actually do something larger, almost create sort of a plaza in front? How do we tie that into the sidewalks on Main Street so it feels like there's more of a more integration between kind of Albion and Main from a pedestrian and from a walkability standpoint? I think those are the types of things that we want to look at a little bit more fully, so that we can come up with something that, we think ultimately kind of draws people from Main Street onto Albion as part of the downtown corridor, and isn't just kind of throw in a new sidewalk and be done with it. Does that make sense?
It does. Does anybody have any questions for Jonathan on that? I've been privy to a lot of this, so I'm sort of up to date. Doug, any questions? Donna? So one of the things that
definitely makes sense. But go ahead, Donna.
I'm sorry. I was going to say it makes sense to wait and get it, it's been a long time coming anyways, and make it really great.
Yeah.
It's not like we can have programs there right now, or probably the next few months.
Right. Now, one of the things that we didn't mention, but that I think is definitely important, is that doesn't get us any money to do the actual door. That just gets us a ramp. As far in the context of the ramp project. In the context of the street, there's a lot of other things, but in the context of we need a ramp to get into our handicap door. That was sort of, there's a lot of other benefits, but that was the thing that we'd like to have the handicap entrance towards the front. However, with this increased funding, that doesn't mean that money's going to magically show up to do the door. We're still going to have to do our door from the inside, whether it's on the front or on the back. So we're not going to get money for that. Really, it's just the ramp and the front scaping of it, right, Jonathan?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Now on the back, just to I think elaborate a little bit, Chris, on the point that you made. So we do have an easement for that, basically 8-foot strip that would go from the door in the back out to Chestnut Street. So that, by I think in the deed for the folks that own that building where Santander Bank is, the town does have a permanent easement for that. So we know that we'd be able to, create basically a walkway from Chestnut onto the back door at Albion. One of the things I think that we'll want to try to do, and I know Steve Mayo has talked about meeting with the building owner, basically to see if we can kind of dress that up a little bit if we do decide to move ahead with the door in the back of the building, so that we can do some landscaping and just make that a kind of nicer way of getting into the building. I think he felt that if we offered to like repave the parking lot and just kind of make it a little nicer for them, it would represent sort of a value add for the building owner, but also would allow us to kind of create something that's a little bit more inviting than just feeling like you're walking into an alley into the back. So I think there's more to come on that. Again, if you guys do decide to move ahead with the plans for the door in the back, I think there's some things that we could do relatively easily to try to dress that up a little bit, and again, just create a little bit more of an entrance feeling from Chestnut Street and from that parking lot.
So I think that's all good. And I don't think that we really have, really any super decisions to make tonight, other than this is really just getting it on record. A lot of the conversations that Jonathan and I have had with various people and each other, just so that people know, like, we're really going through the due diligence on this in a pretty major way. I was hoping that the front door option would have a little bit more speed to it. It's not going to. It seems as if the rear door option, which we've already voted on doing, makes sense. However, as far as votes or decisions, it's really just getting everybody up to speed as to, hey, all these conversations have been going on. And I spoke with Ann, the DPW manager, today, and I think that between myself, Jonathan, Ann, and whatnot, we need to engage the building owners to just talk a little bit more about, this idea, like Jonathan was saying with the easement, hey, can we dress it up? By the way, hey, we're doing it. Hey, Santander Bank, hey, we're going to do this thing in the back. They have no idea. We've never talked to them before. And I think there might be another landowner there. They have no idea, but I think there's two parties to the easement. So we really need to have the conversations with those parties to let them know that, there's stuff going on and we're thinking about stuff. And maybe, maybe they have some stuff that they've been thinking about that they've never said to anybody because no one's ever asked them. So I think where we're at this point is probably, going towards the rear, but we don't really, it's still sort of on the table of there's more talks going on. And before we need to get a couple more architecture drawings. That's okay. But I think we're going to probably in the next month or so try to connect and get these conversations going with various parties, with the other landowners of, hey, we're thinking about doing this thing, which we have, fairly spec'd out, and we can get done, within months once we have sort of an agreement and just a consensus building with these other people to make sure that we don't hear anything that's crazy. Like, oh, hey, I was going to build a parking garage there. I didn't even know there was an easement, things like that. So there's some more conversations to be had in the next month or two. In all likelihood, I see the conversations going, well, if, either inconsequential or well. They might just not care and say, hey, fine, you've got an easement, you can just use the easement and it's fine. Or, maybe they get a little bit more engaged. But as far as time goes, we still can get our full handicap ADA accessibility through the rear within, say, 5 or 6 months. Give it another month or so to have conversations, to find out where those conversations lie. And then after those conversations, assuming that they go, like I said, either inconsequential or well, we can then move forward with having Mike draw the next, what they call the bid doc, the bid drawings. We have something that's before a bid drawing right now. And then there's, like I said, there's another 5 or 10 hours of architect guy work where they put together a thing that goes in the bid. And so we'll have the conversations about the easement with the other easement owners. And then after that, assuming, again, it goes either inconsequential or well, we'd then come back and just say, hey, we're ready to pull the trigger. Even though we've said we're ready to pull the trigger, we're gonna do a little more diligence.
So there is no handicapped parking anywhere around the back there?
There is handicap parking. There's regular parking and handicap parking. I don't understand the question.
On Chestnut? Well, somebody in the comments a few minutes ago said one of the DPW folks or somebody brought up the fact that you'd have a handicapped entrance in the back, but no handicap parking.
I think you said that and this was you, Jonathan, I think. You said that we would have a handicap if we took away parking spaces out front.
In the front,
to make a grand entrance.
Yeah, I think the point was because we would have to bump out the sidewalk in the front if we did an accessible entrance there, we would actually eat up, a chunk of parking up there. And so we kind of looked at it and said, well, if we do that, then, we've got to figure out what we do for handicap parking. But if we're taking the spaces away, I think in the back it's different. I know there is at least one handicap spot on Chestnut right around there near that side entrance to the bank, because the handicap entrance to the bank is actually on Chestnut on the side. So I believe there's a spot there. I think the other thing is I don't think that lot gets used after hours after the bank is closed. And so I think the other potential, the other nice thing about if you do have the door in the back, well, it's less visible. you could potentially have people park in that lot for events at night, and it's easy access in and out.
And
I
Donna,
mean,
what
we
I,
have to
what I
talk
think
to the
is-
property owner about that too, but I don't get the I mean, I've parked there at night for other things, and I don't think it's ever been a problem for anyone.
We're not patrolling.
Yeah.
Well, and Donna, I think the thing was, it was more like, hey, if we take away parking spots, where are they going to drop the person off with the wheelchair? Because
Yeah.
usually you pull up out front, there's like a thing that gets them off
Right.
the thing. And if we take the parking spots, there's no spot for them to do that. On the Chestnut Street side, I think in the parking lot, there's a couple spots, plus there's street parking and other available downtown parking and handicap access so people can get on their wheelchair. One of the things that we hope, I think, comes out of this conversation with landowners is the idea that with this second phase of the envisioned downtown project and whatnot, that we could make that pathway from Chestnut Street much more attractive to our door, because our project basically is the door with the vestibule, sort of like two little doors and a little bit of a path to where the three properties meet. That's where our project ends. And then there's the 8-foot fire lane, which is where it's a fire lane / easement part. That part's already paved. And so I think what we're trying to say is, hey, we're going to do this part here, but if you're okay with the easement and everyone's on board, we're going to dress up this section. And that, because it's in the exterior, could come from this downtown redevelopment money that Jonathan's talking about. Whereas the door and everything interior that we're doing, even if we did it on the front, as soon as you hit the door, we're paying for that. And
Right.
the benefit on the front side, if it was part of the project, which it doesn't, which we were talking about not being, would just be that we basically might not pay for the ramp, or we might get just a much more grand entrance that I wouldn't say we wouldn't be paying for because we're all the town, but that wouldn't be coming out of the specific budget. It'd be coming out of a streetscape budget.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
And
And the
just to
back, the
clarify,
plans
in the
and
back-
everything look good.
Just to clarify in the back, I think I'm not sure if we'd be using Envision money to pay for any renovations to the parking lot in the back. That might be something that we pay for from town funds. However, because we're not there talking about like regrading anything or building any structures or anything like that, that's a relatively cleaning up that and kind of dressing up that easement and creating a path is a relatively sort of low cost piece compared to building a ramp out of concrete in the front that matches the sidewalks and all that. So I think on the back, I don't know that would be those would be Envision dollars, but again, it's something that I think from a town perspective, we'd probably be able to figure out how to handle that relatively inexpensively.
Because it would definitely improve the look of that whole back area there.
I agree. And I think it's also a really good idea to have, all three property owners, I think it's three, but if it's just us in the bank, on board. We spent a lot of time with this, a lot of time and a lot more time in the last month or two. So, yeah, I think it's good for everybody to be on the same page. So there's stuff to go there. So I think, as far as the overall update is just, we're going to continue our conversations and try to get those landowners into conversations with myself, Jonathan, DPW, the circle of trust of us to, get an update, get a feel. And then when we meet again in a couple of weeks, a month, whenever that is, or whenever we have info back, if it takes a little bit longer and we don't have an update next month, it'll be, within a month or two to just say, hey, we went and did this diligence and this is what the results of it were. And we can revisit our decisions. Good? Everybody good? All right. Does anybody else have anything else to say on the item number 2, the rear door update? That's a no from Donna. Let's see. I see Doug's muted.
I'm
Doug?
sorry, what?
Anything else for the number 2, the rear door project?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Number 3, we have listed the bathroom update. There's really no update there because we've been spending so much time on all these other conversations. So I haven't gotten within. She's aware of our tile situation. We've got tiles that need to be fixed on the top from the bathroom project. Wasn't really completed right. So there's a piece there with some tiles and stuff that needs to be taken care of. We've talked about it once. I'll just continue to follow up with her. I consider what we're doing with the easement and getting that stuff out to bid higher value item at the moment. So our tile will get fixed, and if it takes a little bit longer, it's not a big deal. The bathrooms still work. I mean, it's a big deal that we get it finished correctly, but it's not going to stop us with anything that's going on. So we're going to continue to pursue the rear door conversations, and then as those progress and we get a little more time, we'll talk about fixing those couple pieces of tile and stuff in the bathroom so that can be brought to a completion point. So does anybody have any questions on that? Nope. Okay. Next item is the sign size and style review. And so I sent, actually, I think, Jonathan, I don't think you got this, but I think everybody else got this a little while ago, which was the updated sign information. So the sign information, this is our, can you see it? This is roughly what our sign mock-up looks like. You've seen this, you've seen it in email. We've got a new version of this, which came out, and it looks slightly different in that the bracket's a little different, but that's just an error on the piece of paper. It's the same way that we had it before. What he was showing here is that the changes in the sign, we did up the dimensions a little bit. And so we're going from, let's see here, we're going from a 33.7 inch wide facade on the sign where it says Albion Cultural Exchange to 40.4 inches. The height of it goes from 40 inches to 48 inches. So it's basically been bumped up about 20%. And we've talked to Jim McBain, who's like the sign whisperer for town and on the zoning appeals board, or the people that make the decisions as far as permitting goes. So we've got, and it was with his suggestion that we made these changes to up things. He suggested that if we wanted anything bigger, that we should ask for it now. So he approved the first design, like everything was in scope with what was there, and then made the suggestion that if we wanted it bigger, let us know. We went down there, we sent some pictures out to people. I said to him, well, let's price out the bigger one, because there's no actual guarantee that you're going to get the bigger one, because it's going to go through an approval process. The indication is that as long as we didn't go crazy and we went 20 to 25%, they wouldn't have a problem with that. At this point, looking at the sign, the price went up about $800, $800 or $900 to get the larger sign. Again, that's sort of an estimate at this point because we need to find the exact dimensions. So if we go with we bumped our sign costs up a little bit. I don't think significant or in any kind of prohibitive way. It's just to know that I have an updated estimate. It's at $58.75 is the current number. And so I talked to Bob about that a little bit earlier. And, I'm going to open it up for discussion in any direction that anybody wants to take this, with the hopes that we can get a consensus that we want to move forward with this with Bob and start the permitting process. During the permitting process, we'll find out how big they'll actually let us go. Again, we're not trying to go too crazy. We're going within scope of what was recommended. And we did seek input from, like I said, the permitting authority and the various players in there before. So this isn't going to be completely new to them when we put in our application. We just need to find out, what kinds of things they may have concerns about and get to a point where we are permitted to do this. So I'm going to open it up for anyone with sign questions. One other thing on the difference between the signs, aside from they're like basically 8 inches wider and taller, the thickness of the signs going from 4 inches to 5 inches. And I think that's to compensate and cover various weights. And the bracket is also upgraded to handle everything for this. Once we beat up any more questions people have on the signs, and if we can get a vote that we want to move forward with this, I can start the permitting process with Bob. So I'm going to open it up to see, does anybody have any questions or comments?
Just have one question. I saw the picture that you sent out with Doug holding it up. The dark semicircle on the top, is that bone? See on the picture, you've just got the grid without the,
So the
It's gonna
problem
have
is, yeah, on the sample that that they gave us, the lines were very thin. It was really just to show us the size of the sign and not the
Okay.
details of it. That was my concern
Okay.
at first too, because I'm like, I
didn't
can't
look
see
right.
any lines on there.
yeah,
Don't
and then,
worry.
the top was gone. The whole, the whole semicircle with the keystone was missing from the, okay. Other than that, it looked good. Well, you guys saw it, right? What did you think when you held it up? You were right there.
I thought it looked good. Did you see the pictures we sent?
Yes, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. That's where the top was missing.
It looked
I thought
good. It seemed like it could be bumped up. And again, the bumping up and, going up 20, 25%, or he put it at 20%. I think all of the designs are great. I think it definitely could benefit from being larger. However, everything's in scale with all the requirements, and we did review all that. So I think it really comes down to we'll have a conversation with them during permitting, and if they allow us to have the 20% bigger sign, we'll have it. If they don't, we'll have it still. I don't think there's really a big issue there. We want to get permission. We don't want to offend anybody. And it was their suggestion, or one of their team members' suggestions to bump it up. Bob designed everything, I think, really within the line of the regulation. And then he brought it to them. And then, and if you know Bob McBain, I think his first name is Bob. If you know him, he's an idea guy. He loves to think about these things. So he was like, okay, great, it's designed within spec, but maybe you want it bigger because he's in the signs and he wants it to be the best sign that we could be, and so he's really got like the interest in a very wholesome way for Wakefield. So it's not like he's just saying, make it as big as you can and put neon on it. He's saying, oh, I think you could bump up here. And, coming from that person in their position in all of that, I take that as good advice.
Hey, it would be pretty cool to have the Albion Cultural Exchange be a neon, right?
Flashing.
Flashing, right. That won't annoy the neighbors.
Yeah.
So you said the bracket will be from the top, so we'll hang down, and it will have the lights like we had from before.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we're going to go through, and really tonight what we're looking through is that, that I'm hoping that we can get to, once everybody's had their opportunity to say or comment in any way that they wish, is that we want to move forward with this. We're happy with this design. I think the pricing is definitely reasonable, and it's not exorbitant in any kind of way. And I think we have a winner here. So if we do just if we can get everybody to sort of say aye and then we're going to go forward, then we fill out the paperwork and just see how I don't know, is it it's ZBA or planning or whoever the proper people are, which Bob will have us fill out the application with. To get this on there, what requirements they're going to have. They'll have the ultimate say of how big is it, and we'll probably just go with it. We might advocate, hey, can we really have it bigger? Come on, but it's not going to be a big fight. It's just going to be hey, what would make everyone happy? And assuming that's the case, we'll get the permitting info together, and then once the permitting info is together and we've got approval. At that point, Bob gives me an invoice, and he's going to start and move. He's not like waiting for money to come in. He's done many signs with the town. He did the Civic Center. He's done McDonald's Funeral Home. He's done the storage place underneath Dollar Tree. He does this all day long in this environment with all of these people. So, and he knows that we have the money to pay for it. So, once if assuming that everyone says, we're good with this, he'll start the permitting process. As soon as we get that process along the way where we can move forward, he'll give me an invoice that's roughly 50% of the cost. If we have to buy him, if you look at the details of the proposal, if we need him to show up at any meetings, I think he has himself in at $50 or $60 an hour, which is totally fair. And he may not need to though, and I don't think he's not really trying to milk it in any kind of way. I think he's pretty much said, well, you can just go in there and take care of it. And course, I've never done this before. He's done it a bunch of times. So I'm kind of like, yeah, you know, I mean, I think we'd be happy to pay you for an hour or two. But either way, I mean, I don't see it being a huge problem. It's just really, is everybody satisfied? You know, we've been looking at this now for, I don't know, you know, at least 3 months. And the lighting, and we've had the opportunity to ask a lot of questions and come back with it. Does anybody else have any, you know, questions about anything with the sign? And do you think it's and do you think we're ready to say to take a vote as to whether we want to move this forward?
I think we're good for a vote. Do we need to wait for Joy and Kathy, or is it just whoever's here votes on it?
I think we have a quorum, and Jonathan, you can tell me here. I think we have a quorum enough to do that, and I have talked to Joy and Kathy. Both have indicated, what do you call it, that they are in favor of this offline. I think Kathy, Joy sent me an email. It was either yesterday or very early this morning. You know, it's awesome. Let's do it. Let's get it done. How fast can we do this? And I haven't heard anything negative at all from Kathy, and I think she was pleased with it at our last meeting as well. Yeah. I do think that we have enough people to take a vote.
Yeah, from my understanding, I think everybody was on board. There was just the question of the size. So I think from my standpoint, I think we're good to go to ask for the larger size, and we'll see what happens.
Permitting will decide the actual size. You know what I mean? We hit the line of the law with what we held up, and we ask for a little bit of a bump. If they say yes, great. If they say no,
we're back to where we started. So either way, I vote for, that's what we talked about last time. We might as well ask for the larger one now because it'll never come around again. So ask and
all right.
take it from there.
I'm on board.
I'm on board.
I'm on board. Jonathan, any comments?
I was just going to say, Chris, technically, how many members do you have? Are you 6 or 7?
That's a good question. Let's see,
So you're missing Joy, Kathy, Tony.
We had Tony for a minute. Karen hasn't been here in a while. Well, she's on the board, but she hasn't made a meeting in a while.
So I do think you probably technically need 4 people here to vote, so you have a quorum.
Okay.
And then
All
vote
right,
by
well, it should
email?
be. Oh, go ahead.
Can they
What was
just vote by email?
That's what I was going to ask.
I think technically they can't under the open meeting law. I think it has to be in person or whatever the approximation of us being in person is these days.
One of them call in, I wonder?
They're not going to. I'll talk to Bob tomorrow. If I have to, I'll just schedule another meeting to just vote on this.
Okay.
You good with that, Jonathan?
That's fine. Yeah, no, and I apologize. I don't mean to be the stumbling block.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need to follow the rules and.
Okay.
I was gonna say if you could get one person to call in now, you could do it.
What happened to Tony? It looked like he tried to get in.
I saw him on there. He had no video.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Let me. Now, if I got her on the phone, I'll talk to. Tell you, I don't think there's any harm in prepping paperwork.
No.
But we'll take an official vote.
Okay.
Good. Looking for all nods. Jonathan?
I think that makes sense. I mean, there's nothing to stop you from getting the
It's just paperwork.
Right.
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 And we're not actually going to pay a bill for like a month or two until we get a permitting thing, like a conversation finished. As soon as they say, yeah, you can do it. And then really the question there is going to be, it'll be interesting to find out what our permitting costs will be, because since this is an internal thing to the town, that might be different depending on how they want to do it, but I'll leave that to them. Versus being a private building, the process might be different. Either way, we're not actually going to cut or submit any invoices, for over 30 days. So we can just bring it back up when we have more of us on the call.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the intent is there and good enough to keep going. Does anybody else have any signed stuff to talk about?
Nope.
All right, so that was really one of the big things here, because I don't think a lot of the rest, I don't think there's much here in the rest of the agenda. I'll go over the items that we have here. We had number 5, the nonprofit Friends of Ace establishment. There's really no new information on that because we've been spending our time on doorways and the stuff that we've just talked about. So I'm going to leave that as a standing item just because it's something that we need to talk about regarding funding. But we don't need to talk about it right now, but we do need to have it on our active agenda of things. Once we get through this other handicap accessible thing, elevators, we're looking at that. That's a lot of money and a lot of other things. And we're going to need some help in some sort of way coming up with elevators. We're going to need money for sprinklers. We're going to need a lot of money coming up. So we need to, just start thinking about what our structure is. We've had financing of $200,000 at this point, which we're getting close to, spending. So we're going to have to figure out where that next infusion is going to come from. And I don't really know where that's going to be, but the idea that a nonprofit public-private partnership helps move that forward is something that we worked on with Paul Broder back when he was a state rep, as well as Jason Lewis and Donald Wong, and they gave us referrals to people to put those structures in place. A longer conversation for probably 3 or 4 months out at this point. Number 6, future events, rules and guidelines. And actually, Jonathan, I don't know if you heard, I copied you on a message. Kathy sent me a request for the Arts Collaborative to meet, I believe it's October 21st, and indicated that she thinks it'll be about 10 people and that they would all be 6 feet apart and do proper social distancing. I sent a note to the health director indicating all that. I copied you, Jonathan. Did you see that?
I did see that. I haven't heard anything back from her. I don't know if she responded directly to you, Chris.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard back.
Okay.
I'm assuming she's busy. I mean, there's a pandemic going on. Anyways, just so that everyone's aware, Kathy's requested the Arts Collaborative to meet in the building. Jonathan had researched our proper protocols, and what really came back was, the guidelines for museums that the state has, and more specifically, let Ruth know what's going on, our health director. So I let her know what's going on. She hasn't responded yet. I'm, pretty hopeful that she'll say yes. She might not, but we sent it to her. We told her how we're going to do it and what the plan is, and maybe she'll have a tweak to the plan. She may want us to make a list for contact tracing. She may say, hey, okay, but, have separate pens so that everybody can write down that they were there or something like that. So that's, that's coming up as far as October 21st. We may or may not meet before that. Assuming that Ruth Clay doesn't have a problem with that, I'm going to, say that the Arts Collaborative is going to meet. And their mission is really to figure out what our next events are going to be. We've queried them several times, and everybody was a little scared as far as getting together for events, but this is a step in the right direction, or in a gathering direction. Whether that's right or wrong is up to interpretation, but this is a step in the direction of starting to use the building again and getting people in there. So as long as the health director doesn't have a problem, and nobody right now has a problem with that, I'm assuming that's going to happen. Does anybody have any concerns? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to just skip to the next item. Video update. Haven't heard back from our high school guy that's working on some of our video stuff. I'm assuming with school starting and all that sort of stuff, he's doing things. I haven't also, connected with him. The scope is really wide open on that. So we'll just keep that as a holding item until I hear from Kenny over at Wakefield High School TV. Number 8, bills. No new bills to pay this month. Number 9, streetscape meetings. That's really number 2 under another heading. So number 9's a duplicate within. We talked about the plaza concept and the new dimensions on Albion Street. And that's really about it. Does anybody have any unanticipated topics or anything they want to talk about that we haven't gotten to or talked about thus far?
Not for me, no.
No, we're good. Okay. So I don't know. We try to do the first Wednesday of the month usually for meetings, but everything's been weird with the pandemic and with different conversations. And tonight it was important that we had a conversation, just because so much communication's been going on between Councilor Chines and the Ann Waite, the DPW manager, and the town engineer, and myself, and Doug was down, and we did some stuff. So there's just been a lot of stuff going on, with that, where, I thought it was important to really just get it on record. Get it on record. This is what we're doing, because I didn't want to wait too long. My point being that we're probably not going to meet next Wednesday, which is our standard night that we meet, the first Wednesday of the month, unless something really extreme happens. It'll probably be a couple weeks out, and worst case scenario, it would be the first Wednesday in November, but I'm anticipating probably in about 3 weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have something worthy to discuss. And really that's I think the next, critical thing is going to be, it'll be sign stuff and entrance stuff. We'll have an update as to how the conversations are going with our fellow easement people. And then we'll have an update on sign and permitting stuff. And those will be the real bones of the next time that we meet. And a lot of these other things will just sort of maintain, in holding. Oh, and maybe at that point, if the 21st, looking at my calendar, the 21st is a Wednesday, so maybe it'll be the week after that, because then assuming the Arts Collaborative is granted permission by the health director, we may have an update from the Arts Collaborative as to what event they are willing to work on to get us, back in action, and to just, get events going on there. And hopefully it's something that cascades, that, once we sort of, break the seal of going from frozen to starting to crawl back, we're just so much more awesome than we were last year. I mean, like, it kills me because we've got bathrooms now, and we might have a sign, and I mean, we're like a totally different place. And so, I mean, we want to get out and strut our stuff, and hey, look at us. I mean, we spent 5 years trying to get here, and then this virus thing happened, and I mean, we were supposed to have 5 parties in, what was it, May, June,
Yeah.
It's a thing. So, I mean, let's get back to good is really where it's at. So I'm expecting a couple weeks. Those will be our 3 big things, what's going on with the sign permitting process, vote stuff for when money needs to be spent, what's going on with the entrance thing and easement people, and what's going on with the Arts Collaborative. So those are 3 big things that we should have more information on within a couple weeks.
Okay. All right.
Excellent.
Great.
So, that's all I've got. Doug, anything?
Nothing else from me.
Okay. Donna, anything?
Nothing. I'm good.
Mr. Gines?
No, other than just, thanks to the 3 of you and for the other folks on the board for all the work that you've been doing. As you said, Chris, it's kind of a shame because there have been so many great things that have happened over the last year there, and to not be able to take advantage of the space is frustrating. But we'll get there, and I think the progress that's been made is just outstanding.
Awesome. I agree. All right. With that, I think we're going to adjourn. Motion to adjourn with future date to be determined for our next meeting. Everybody on board with that?
Okay.
Hand in the air. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Good night, everyone.